Enjoy the time out, old man.
I was 68 years old when they tied me to that old pine pole out in the middle of nowhere and left me to bake under the Mississippi sun. They laughed like kids playing a game, like it was nothing more than a joke to pass the time. They didn't know the man they were breaking was already broken long ago, and that I'd come back to this town not to start trouble, but to finish something that had been eating at me for decades. My name is Elijah Washington. Folks around here used to call me Eli when I was a boy, and I still answer to it, though not many folks left who remember that name without adding old in front of it. I was born right here in Riverbend, Mississippi, back in the late 50s, in a little shotgun house on the edge of the black side of town. The river ran slow and muddy behind our place, and every summer the air smelled like wet pine and red clay dirt that stuck to everything. My daddy worked the mill until they said he talked back one too many times, and my mama took in washing to keep the lights on. We weren't poor in the way folks think of poor now. We had food on the table, church on Sundays, and each other, but we lived under a weight that never let up. A quiet knowing that one wrong step could cost you everything. I left Riverbend when I was 18, saw too much, watched my best friend get his jaw broken by a deputy for standing too close to a white girl at the county fair. Saw my own daddy come home one night with his shirt torn and blood on his lip, saying nothing, just sitting in the dark kitchen until dawn. I couldn't breathe here anymore. Packed a duffel bag, took the Greyhound north, and didn't look back for more than 40 years. Those years, I spent working for the federal government. First the Justice Department, then the FBI's Civil Rights Task Force. I was one of the quiet ones, the kind they sent into small towns to listen, to watch, to build cases that could stand up in court. I never wore a badge on my chest. I carried a notebook, a recorder, and a lot of patience. I took down crooked sheriffs in Alabama, dirty police chiefs in Louisiana, whole departments that thought they were untouchable. Every time I closed a file, I thought maybe I was paying back something I owed this part of the country. But the work never really let me rest. It just piled more weight on my shoulders until I retired last year, handed in my credentials, and told myself I was done. Retirement didn't feel like freedom. It felt empty. My wife Ruth had passed 5 years earlier, cancer, quick and cruel, and our daughter lives in Atlanta with kids of her own. The house in Virginia sat quiet. I started thinking about Riverbend again, about the cemetery where my sister Clara is buried. She died young, 23, from pneumonia the local hospital wouldn't treat because she was black and the beds were full. I never got to say goodbye proper. I figured maybe going back, putting flowers on her stone, seeing the old neighborhood might close some door inside me that had stayed cracked open all these years. So I got in my old Buick, nothing fancy, just reliable, and drove south. The trip took 2 days. I stopped at every rest area, ate at every roadside diner that looked like it had been there since the 50s. The closer I got to Mississippi, the heavier the air felt, like the humidity was pressing memories back into my skin. I turned the radio to an old gospel station out of Jackson. Mahalia Jackson's voice filled the car, strong and steady, the way my mama used to sing when she ironed clothes on Sunday afternoons. I crossed into Riverbend just after noon on a Tuesday. The town hadn't changed much. Same main street with the hardware store, the pharmacy, Sally's Diner still standing on the corner with the same faded red awning. The black side of town looked rougher. More boarded up houses, more weeds in the yards, but the river still ran the same, slow and brown. I drove past the old mill where my daddy used to work. It was closed now. Chain link fence around it, rust eating the sign. I felt a tightness in my chest, the kind that comes when you realize time didn't wait for you to come back and fix things. I pulled into Sally's parking lot. The gravel crunched under my tires. Inside, the place smelled like fried chicken and coffee, same as always. The bell above the door jingled. A couple of older black men sat at the counter, talking low. A white waitress, new since my time, poured coffee without looking up. I took a stool at the end, ordered black coffee and a piece of pecan pie. The men glanced over, nodded once, went back to their conversation. I heard the word police more than once, low and careful, like they were afraid the walls had ears. One of them, a thin man with gray hair, leaned toward the other. They got another one last week. Tied him up out by the old logging road. Left him there till sundown. Kid's still limping. I kept my eyes on my coffee, but my ears stayed open. The waitress slid the pie in front of me. "Passing through?" she asked. She looked out the window at my car, then back at me. "Keep your head down. Things been tense around here lately." I nodded, took a bite of pie. It tasted like childhood, sweet, sticky, a little burnt on the edges. I paid with cash, left a good tip, and walked out into the heat. The sun was high, pressing down like a hand on my neck. I got back in the Buick and headed toward the cemetery. Figured I'd see Clara's stone first, then maybe drive by the old house, see if anything looked familiar. I didn't get far. About a mile outside the town square, a patrol car came up behind me fast. Lights flashing, but no siren. I pulled over onto the shoulder. The dirt was soft, red, and my tires sank a little. 2 officers got out, both white, both young, maybe late 20s. One was stocky, buzz-cut, the other taller, lean, with mirrored sunglasses. They walked up slow, hands on their belts. The taller one, name tag said Tate, leaned in my window. "License and registration." I handed them over without a word. My hands were steady. I'd been through this before, too many times, in too many towns. He looked at my license, then at me. "Elijah Washington. Riverbend address on here is old. You from around here?" "Used to be," I said. The stocky one, Rawls, walked around the car, looking in the windows. "Nice ride for a man just passing through. Where you headed?" "Cemetery," I said. "Visiting family." Tate handed the license back. "Step out of the vehicle." I hesitated for half a second. Not long enough to make it a problem, but long enough to feel the old instinct kick in. Fight or freeze. I opened the door slow, stepped out. The heat hit me full force. My shirt stuck to my back already. Rawls patted me down rough, hands lingering on my pockets. "What you got in the trunk?" "Nothing," I said. "Open it." I did. Empty except for my duffel bag and a couple of bottles of water. They rummaged anyway, tossing clothes on the ground. Tate found my notebook, the one I still carried from habit, and flipped through it. "Lots of writing here." "You a writer?" "Old habit," I said. He closed it, handed it back. "We got a report of a vehicle swerving. Matches your description." I looked at him. I wasn't swerving. Rawls stepped closer. "You calling me a liar, boy?" The word landed like a slap. I felt the muscle in my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice level. "No, sir." Tate smiled, thin and mean. "We're going to take you in for some questions. Get in the back of the cruiser." I calculated quick. I could argue, demand a supervisor, maybe get a supervisor who was worse. Or I could go along, see where this led. I'd come back to Riverbend to look, not to fight. Not yet. I walked to the cruiser. Rawls cuffed my hands behind my back, tight, metal biting into the skin. They shoved me into the cage. The door slammed. The car smelled like old sweat and vinyl. We drove past the turn for the precinct, out toward the county line, down a gravel road lined with pine trees. The road narrowed, turned to dirt. They pulled off onto a logging path, stopped in a clearing. A single utility pole stood in the center, weathered, splinters showing where bark had peeled away. They dragged me out. Rawls unlocked one cuff, pulled my arms around the pole, locked them again on the other side. my cheek pressed against the rough wood. Tate stood in front of me, arms crossed. We got a little tradition here for folks who don't know their place. Call it the timeout spot. You sit tight. Think about your choices. Rawls took the water bottle from the car, drank long, then poured the rest out on the dirt at my feet. Hot day, he said. Might take us a while to run your name. They laughed, that hollow sound men make when they think they're in control. Then they got back in the cruiser, backed up, and drove away. Dust settled on my shoes. Silence came down heavy. The cuffs cut deeper every time I shifted. The sun climbed higher. Sweat ran into my eyes, stinging. My mouth went dry fast. I tested the cuffs. Standard issue, double locked, no give. I stood there, arms wrapped around the pole like I was hugging it, cheek scraping wood every time I breathed, and the memories came. I was 12 again, watching my daddy stand in front of a patrol car just like this one. The deputy, old man Tate's daddy, same last name, had pulled him over for nothing, made him stand spread eagle on the hood while they searched the truck. Daddy's hands shook, but he didn't say a word. Now here I was, same town, same family name on the badge, same pole probably. The wood felt the same under my skin, rough, unforgiving. The sun felt the same, hot iron pressing down. Only difference was I wasn't a boy anymore. I was an old man with a lifetime of files and scars and a quiet rage that had been simmering so long it felt like part of my heartbeat. I closed my eyes, tried to slow my breathing, counted the minutes. 1 hour, 2, the heat pressed harder. My legs started to cramp. Sweat soaked my shirt, dripped down my back. My wrists burned where the metal had rubbed skin raw. I thought about Ruth. She'd have hated this. She'd have told me to fight, to scream, to make them remember my name, but she wasn't here, and I knew screaming wouldn't help. Not out here. I opened my eyes. A hawk circled high above, wings wide against the blue. Free. I watched it until my vision blurred from the glare. My tongue felt thick, swollen. I tried to swallow. Couldn't. The world narrowed to the pole against my cheek, the cuffs on my wrists, the sun on my neck. Then I heard it, faint at first, then louder. An engine, coming closer, tires on gravel. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I lifted my head, squinted into the dust. The sound grew, closer, louder. I stood as straight as I could, waited. The engine noise cut through the quiet like a dull blade. It wasn't fast, wasn't urgent, just the low growl of that same cruiser rolling back in, tires crunching gravel slow enough to let the anticipation build. I kept my head up, eyes fixed on the dust cloud that announced them before the car did. My arms ached in a way that had moved past sharp pain into something deeper, a steady throb that matched my pulse. The pole had warmed under the sun, almost hot to the touch now, like it was soaking up the heat just to give it back to me. They stopped a few yards away. Doors opened. Boots hit the ground. Tate came around first, Slushie in hand, ice melting down the side of the cup. Rawls followed, chewing on something, spitting brown juice into the dirt. They looked refreshed, like they'd spent the afternoon in air conditioning somewhere with cold drinks and laughter. Tate walked up close enough I could smell the cherry syrup on his breath. Still here, old man? Damn, you got some staying power. He took a long pull from the straw, then tilted the cup so a drop of red slush hit the ground near my shoe. We ran your name. Came back clean. Guess you're not as interesting as you look. Rawls circled to my other side, kicked at the dirt. Or maybe the system's slow out here. Either way, you're lucky we're in a good mood. He reached into my back pocket, pulled out my wallet, flipped it open, thumbed through the bills, $43 and some change, then tossed it onto the hood of the cruiser. My phone came next. He pressed the power button, saw it was off, shrugged, and dropped it in the dust beside the wallet. I said nothing. Speaking would have cost me saliva I didn't have. Tate stepped back, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. We got places to be. You enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Might take us a couple more hours to finish up. Don't go nowhere. He smirked at his own joke. Rawls laughed once, short and sharp. Then they both turned, climbed back into the car, and pulled away. The dust rose again, settled on my skin, mixed with the sweat. The quiet returned, heavier than before. The sun shifted west, but it didn't cool. It just changed the angle, burning the side of my face now instead of the back of my neck. My tongue felt like a piece of leather left out too long. Every swallow was a scrape. My legs trembled under me, knees threatening to give, but I locked them straight. Falling would pull harder on the cuffs, tear the skin more. I'd learned that the hard way in the first hour. Time lost shape. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe the other way around. The world shrank to the feel of wood against my cheek, the bite of steel on my wrists, the endless press of heat. Sweat dripped into the raw places, stinging like salt in a cut. I tried to focus on breathing, slow in, slow out, but even that hurt, and then the memories came uninvited, the way they do when your body's too tired to keep the door shut. I was 15, standing in the kitchen doorway, watching Mama pack a small bag for Clara. My sister was 19, fever high, coughing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. The clinic in town had turned her away, said the waiting room was full, but we saw the empty chairs through the window. No room for colored tonight, the nurse had said, not even looking up from her clipboard. Mama carried Clara to the car anyway, drove her 30 miles to the county hospital. They took her in the back door, kept her in a hallway bed for 2 days. Pneumonia took her on the 3rd. The doctor said it was too late. Mama said it was the hallway that killed her. I remembered the funeral. Small, quiet, just family, and a few neighbors who dared show up. Daddy stood at the grave, hat in hand, staring at the dirt like it owed him an explanation. After, he never spoke Clara's name again. Not once. It was like she'd been erased. I left a year later. Couldn't stand the silence in the house, the way Daddy's shoulders stayed hunched even when he wasn't carrying anything. I told myself I was going north to make something of myself, to send money back, to fight the system from farther away. But the truth was simpler. I was scared. Scared of what would happen if I stayed and tried to push back. Scared I'd end up like Daddy, broken quiet, or like Clara, gone too soon. 40 years of files and courtrooms and late-night stakeouts hadn't erased that fear. It just buried it deeper. Every case I closed, every crooked cop I helped put away, I told myself it was for them, for Clara, for Daddy, for the boy I used to be. But standing here now, arms wrapped around this pole, I wondered if I'd just been running all along. A sound broke the thought. A truck engine, older, rougher than the cruiser. It rattled down the logging road, slowed, stopped. I tensed. Could be anyone. Could be worse. The driver's door creaked open. Footsteps on gravel. An older black man stepped into view. Overalls, faded ball cap, face lined like cracked earth. He looked around quick, eyes wide, then hurried over. He stopped a few feet away, hands up like he was approaching a wild animal. "You all right?" His voice was low, careful. I tried to speak. Only a rasp came out. He glanced back toward the road, then pulled a thermos from his coat pocket, unscrewed the cap, held it to my lips. The water was warm, tasted of metal and dust, but it went down like life itself. I drank slow, afraid I'd choke. "Easy," he said. "They'll be back. They always come back at sundown. That's their game." I swallowed again. Who are you? Name don't matter. Just a man who's seen this before. He looked at the pole, at the cuffs. They did it to my grandson last summer. Jimmy broke his ankle when he tried to stand up too quick. Doctor said he'd walk with a limp forever, maybe worse. He poured a little more water into my mouth. I can't cut you loose. They'd know. They'd come for me next. Burned a barn once for less. I nodded once. Understanding. Acceptance. He screwed the cap back on, tucked the thermos away. Hold on, son. Sundown's coming. They'll let you go then. Just don't fight. Fighting makes it last longer. He backed away, eyes darting, then turned and walked to his truck. The engine coughed to life. He drove off slow, dust trailing behind him like regret. The quiet settled again. But something had shifted inside me. The water cooled my throat, but more than that, it reminded me I wasn't invisible. Someone had seen me. Someone had risked something to help. That small act cracked the despair just enough for anger to seep through. Not the hot, blind kind, but the slow, steady burn I'd carried for decades. I thought of Ruth. She'd sit with me on the porch after a long case, pour me tea, and say the same thing every time. Eli, don't let hate win. It's a thief. Steals your days, your sleep, your peace. Fight the wrong, but don't let it live in you. She'd been gone 5 years, but her voice was clear now, steady against the pain. I pictured my niece, Lena, still living in the old house on Elm Street, raising 2 boys alone since her husband passed. If this was happening to strangers, what was happening to kids like hers, to families who couldn't leave? The sun dropped lower, shadows stretching long across the clearing. My legs shook harder. The cuffs had swollen my wrists. Every movement sent fresh fire up my arms. But the anger had hardened into something else. Resolve. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to break. I was going to remember every word they'd said, every laugh, every drop of water they poured out. I was going to carry it. The engine came again. Same cruiser, same slow roll. They stopped. Doors opened. Tate walked up first, keys jingling. "Time's up," he said. He unlocked one cuff, yanked my arm free, then the other. My hands fell to my sides, numb, pins and needles racing through them. I stumbled, caught myself against the pole. Rawls grabbed my shoulder, shoved me toward the dirt. "Get out of town. If we see you after dark, we won't be so polite next time." They tossed my wallet and phone at my feet. The phone landed screen down, cracked. I bent slow, picked them up, dusted them off. My fingers wouldn't close right yet. Tate leaned in close. "You hear me, old man?" I looked him in the eye. Said nothing. He shoved me again, harder. I staggered but stayed upright. They watched me a moment longer, then climbed back in the car and drove away. I stood there until the dust settled. The clearing was empty now, just me and the pole and the fading light. My wrists looked raw, red rings where the metal had bitten deep. I rubbed them, felt the sting, welcomed it. It was proof I'd survived. I started walking. The road back to town was 3 miles, maybe 4. My legs protested every step, but I kept moving, one foot in front of the other. The sky turned orange, then purple. Crickets started up in the trees. A dog barked somewhere far off. By the time I reached the motel on the edge of town, the Whispering Pines, same name as when I was a boy, the sky was full dark. I paid cash at the desk, no questions asked. The clerk didn't look twice at my dirty clothes or my swollen hands. In the room, I locked the door, leaned against it, and let the breath I'd been holding come out in a rush. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the light. The mirror showed a man I barely recognized, face streaked with dust and sweat, eyes red-rimmed, shirt plastered to my chest. I stripped off the shirt, ran water over my wrists. The soap burned, but I scrubbed anyway. Blood mixed with water swirled down the drain. I dried off, wrapped clean towels around the worst cuts, then sat on the edge of the bed. The room was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner. I stared at the wall. Tears came then. Not loud sobs, just silent tracks down my cheeks. I hadn't cried in years, not since Ruth's funeral. But tonight the dam broke. The pain wasn't just in my body. It was in every memory I'd tried to outrun, every face I'd failed to save, every time I'd left instead of stayed. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Enough. I reached into my duffel, pulled out the small digital recorder I'd carried for decades, habit from the old days. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room, clear, casual, cruel, every slur, every laugh, every threat. It was all there. I listened until the battery beeped low. Then I turned it off, set it on the nightstand, and lay back on the bed. Tomorrow I would stop being the victim. I closed my eyes. The air conditioner droned on. Outside, a car passed on the highway. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle sounded long and low. I let the sound carry me towards sleep, knowing that when morning came, I'd be ready to move. Morning light slipped through the thin motel curtains, pale and unforgiving. I woke before the alarm I hadn't set, body stiff as old lumber, wrists throbbing under the towels I'd wrapped around them the night before. The room smelled of stale air and the faint copper of dried blood. I sat up slow, feet on the thin carpet, and stared at the recorder on the nightstand. It looked small, almost harmless. But it held everything, every ugly word, every casual threat. I picked it up, pressed play again just to hear it once more in daylight. Their voices crackled through the tiny speaker, tinny but unmistakable. I shut it off before the laughter started. No need to relive that part yet. I showered careful, letting the hot water sting the raw places until I couldn't tell where the pain from the cuffs ended and the ache from my joints began. Dressed in a clean shirt and jeans, I avoided the mirror this time. No point seeing the old man who'd let himself get tied to a pole like livestock. I packed the recorder in my pocket, the one place it felt safe, and stepped outside. The parking lot was empty except for my Buick and a pickup truck with a dented fender. The air carried the smell of dew on pine needles and distant diesel from the highway. I drove slow through town, windows down, letting the breeze cool my face. Riverbend looked different in the morning. Quiet, almost peaceful. Kids waited at bus stops, backpacks slung low. A woman watered flowers on her porch. Normal life moving on while mine had stopped yesterday afternoon. I turned onto Elm Street. The old house sat at the end of the block. Same white siding gone gray. Same porch swing creaking in the wind. Lena's car was in the drive. A blue sedan with a bumper sticker that read, "Teach the children well." I parked across the street, sat there a minute. My hands shook on the wheel. Not from fear, from the weight of what I was about to do. Open a door I'd kept closed for years. I crossed the lawn, climbed the steps. The porch boards groaned under my weight. I knocked once, soft. The door opened fast. Lena stood there in her teacher clothes, blouse, skirt, hair pulled back. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Uncle Eli?" Her voice cracked on the name. She stepped forward, then stopped. "Lord, what happened to you?" I lifted my arms a little, showed the red marks peeking from under my cuffs. "Long story. Can I come in?" She pulled me inside without another word. The living room was the same. Faded couch, photos on the mantel, Clara's picture still in the center frame. Two boys peeked from the hallway. Her sons, Jamal and Marcus, 8 and 10. They stared at my face, then at my wrists. "Boys, go get ready for school," Lena said, voice steady but tight. They scampered off. She closed the door, turned to me. "Sit, now." I sank onto the couch. She disappeared into the kitchen, came back with a glass of water and a wet cloth. She knelt, pressed the cloth to my wrists gentle, like she was afraid they'd break. "Tell me," she said. I told her the short version first. The stop, the cuffs, the pull, the waiting. I left out the recorder. She listened without interrupting, but her jaw tightened more with every sentence. When I finished, she sat back on her heels. "This is what they do," she said, low, "to keep us in line, to remind us we're still supposed to be afraid. Jimmy from down the street, he's still on crutches from last year. They said it was an accident. Everyone knows better." I nodded. "I know." She looked at me hard. "Why didn't you fight? Your family. You could have—" "I did what I had to," I said. "To stay alive, to get back here." She stood, paced to the window, looked out at the street. "You came back for Clara's grave, you said. But this?" She turned. "You didn't just stumble into this, did you?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out the recorder, set it on the coffee table between us. She stared at it like it might bite. "What is that?" "Proof," I said. "I've been tracking this department for years. Anonymous tips came through the old channels. Patterns of stops, complaints ignored, people hurt and silenced. I flagged Riverbend months ago. When I retired, I didn't really retire. I'm still consulting for the DOJ on civil rights cases. Old habits." Her eyes flicked to my wrists, then back to my face. "You let them do this on purpose?" "Not let," I said. "I didn't fight back because I knew if I did, they'd bury it. No witnesses, no body cam, no paper trail. But I had this." I tapped the recorder. Hidden app on my phone synced to it. Standard gear for investigators who've seen too much. Every word they said, slurs, threats, admissions about their tradition, it's all recorded. Clear as day. She sat down hard on the chair across from me. "You're saying you came here as bait?" "I came to see my sister's grave, to see if the town had changed. But when they pulled me over, I didn't stop it. I let it play out. Because evidence like this doesn't come from polite conversations." Lena covered her mouth with her hand. Tears welled, but she blinked them back. "You could have been killed." "I could have," I said, "but I wasn't. And now we have something they can't deny." She reached for the recorder, hesitated, then picked it up, pressed play. Their voices filled the room again, louder here, sharper. She listened for a minute, face hardening. Then she shut it off. "They threatened my boys once," she said quietly. "Said if I kept complaining about school funding, they'd make sure I regretted it. I stopped talking. Thought it was safer." I leaned forward. "It's not safer anymore. Not for anyone." The doorbell rang. We both froze. Lena glanced at the clock. School bus would come soon. She stood, smoothed her skirt, walked to the door. I stayed seated, hand near my pocket where the recorder lived. She opened the door a crack. I heard Tate's voice, smooth, almost friendly. "Morning, Miss Washington. Just checking on your uncle. Heard he had a rough time yesterday. Wanted to make sure he's okay." Lena's voice stayed even. "He's fine. Resting." Tate pushed the door wider, stepped in without asking. Rawls followed, hat in hand, looking around like he owned the place. Their eyes landed on me. "Well, look who's here," Tate said. "Feeling better?" I stood slow. "Better than yesterday." Rawls smiled thin. "Good. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. Family's important. Wouldn't want anything to happen to them." Lena stepped between us. "You need to leave." Tate ignored her, walked closer to me. "We ran your name again this morning. Old man with a federal pension. Interesting. But pensions can get cut. Complaints can pile up. You understand?" I met his eyes. "I understand plenty." Rawls moved toward the hallway where the boys had been. "Kids home?" Lena's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare!" Tate raised a hand. "Easy. Just talking. But if your uncle here decides to make trouble, file reports, stir things up, we might have to pay more visits, routine checks, safety concerns." I slipped my phone from my pocket slow, thumbed the camera on without looking, snapped a photo, them standing in the living room, Badges visible, expressions clear. The shutter sound was soft, but they heard it. Tate's face changed. "What the hell?" "You just added to the file," I said, calm. "Every threat, every step inside a private home without invitation, it's all going in." Rawls lunged forward, hand out for the phone. I stepped back, raised it higher. "Touch me, and it's assault on top of everything else." Tate grabbed Rawls's arm. "Let's go. This ain't worth it." They backed toward the door. Tate pointed at me. "You're making a mistake, old man. This town doesn't like outsiders telling it how to run." I didn't answer. They left. The door clicked shut. Lena locked it, leaned against it, breathing hard. "You really think this will work?" "I know it will," I said, "because I've done it before." She walked to the mantel, touched Clara's photo. She'd be proud. Scared but proud. I put the phone down. The photo showed their faces clear, arrogance mixed with something new. Uncertainty. The boys came out then, backpacks on. Jamal looked at me. "You okay, Uncle Eli?" I smiled, small. "Getting there?" Lena herded them out the door, kissed their heads, watched the bus pull away. When she came back in, she sat beside me. "What now?" she asked. "Now we wait," I said. "I've got a contact. Old friend at the Civil Rights Division. I'll call him tonight. They'll move quiet. No fanfare, just warrants, interviews, evidence." She nodded. "And you?" "I stay here. Help where I can. Watch the boys. Make sure no one comes back." We sat in silence a while. The house creaked around us, old wood settling, clock ticking in the kitchen. Outside, birds called. Normal sounds. But nothing felt normal anymore. Later, when Lena went to grade papers in the back room, I stepped onto the porch. The street was quiet. I pulled out the recorder again, connected it to my phone, uploaded the new photo and the audio clip to a secure cloud folder I'd used for years. Password protected, encrypted. Then I dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang twice. "Eli?" A woman's voice. "Special Agent Carla Reyes. Same one who'd worked with me on the Alabama cases." "Yeah," I said. "It's time." She didn't ask questions. "Send what you've got." I did. Files uploaded. Confirmation beeped. "We'll move in 2 days," she said. "Unmarked, dawn. Stay low." "I will." She paused. "You okay?" I looked at my wrists. "I'll be fine." We hung up. I sat on the swing, let it rock slow. The sun climbed higher, warming the porch boards. I thought about the boy I used to be. Scared, silent, watching from doorways. I felt him now, that old fear curling in my gut. But this time, I had proof. This time, I wasn't alone. I closed my eyes, listened to the neighborhood wake up. Kids laughing down the block, a lawnmower starting, someone humming a hymn. 2 days. Then the vans would come. I stood, walked back inside, closed the door behind me. The house smelled of coffee and paper. Lena looked up from her desk. "You called?" she asked. "Yeah." She smiled, small but real. "Good." I sat across from her. We didn't speak for a while, just sat, waiting. The clock ticked on. 2 days later, just before first light, I was on the porch again. Coffee in hand, steam rising in the cool air. The street was still dark. Then I saw them. 3 unmarked vans rolling slow, no lights, no sirens. They parked at the end of the block. Doors opened quiet. Agents in plain clothes stepped out, moved toward the precinct, toward the officers' homes. I watched from the shadows of the porch railing. My heart beat steady, strong, not pounding from terror, but from something deeper, something I hadn't felt since I left this town all those years ago. Hope. Real, quiet hope. The vans moved like shadows through the gray light of dawn, doors sliding open without a sound. Agents in plain dark jackets stepped out, badges clipped low on belts, files tucked underarms. They split into small groups, some toward the precinct on the far side of town, others peeling off toward residential streets where Tate and Rawls lived. No lights flashed, no sirens, just quiet purpose. I stayed on the porch, coffee gone cold in my hand, watching the street come alive in slow motion. A neighbor's porch light flicked on, then off again. A dog barked once, then quieted. The town slept on, unaware that the rules were about to change. I didn't move until the first radio crackle reached me. Low voices, clipped words, confirmation of entry. I knew the drill. I'd been on the other side of these operations more times than I could count. But this time, I was inside the story, not writing it from a safe distance. By 8 o'clock, the news had started to spread. Lena came out with fresh coffee, handed me a mug without speaking. We stood together, listening to the faint murmur of sirens now. Official ones, county deputies responding to calls they didn't understand yet. Her phone buzzed first, a text from a colleague at the school. Cops at the station, something big. Then another. Tate's house surrounded. She looked at me. It's happening. I nodded. It is. The arrests came fast. Tate and Rawls were pulled from their homes in handcuffs. Real ones this time, not the loose ones they'd used on me. Body cams on the agents captured everything. The confusion on their faces, the protests, the moment they saw the federal seal on the warrants. The chief was next, taken from his breakfast table in front of his wife. The mayor got the call in his office downtown. By noon, the precinct parking lot looked like a crime scene. Tape strung, agents coming and going with boxes of files, computers, old logs of complaints that had never seen daylight. The town reacted in waves. Some folks stood on sidewalks, arms crossed, muttering about outsiders meddling. Others watched from windows, silent, eyes wide with something close to relief. A few black families walked the streets with their heads higher, like they'd been waiting for this day longer than anyone. Lena and I drove downtown once, just to see. The diner was full, conversations hushed. We didn't stay long. That afternoon, Carla Reyes called. "We got them," she said. "Civil rights violations, false imprisonment, conspiracy under color of law." The recordings sealed it. Witness statements from the old farmer, from Lena's neighbors, from others who finally spoke up. They're piling on. The chief's logs show a pattern of ignored complaints going back a decade. Mayor's office had copies. They knew. I leaned against the kitchen counter, Lena listening beside me. "How long until trial?" "Fast track," Carla said. "We want to send a message. Sentencing could come within months if they don't fight it. And they won't. The evidence is airtight." I thanked her, hung up. Lena looked at me. "What now?" "Now we rebuild," I said. The next weeks blurred into meetings and paperwork. Lena organized the first community gathering at the church on Elm, folding chairs in the basement, coffee in styrofoam cups. Folks sitting close because the room felt safer that way. People spoke who'd never spoken before. A mother whose son had been stopped 20 times in 1 year. A teacher who'd lost her job after complaining about unequal funding. An elderly man who'd seen the pole used on his brother decades ago. I sat in the back, listening. When they asked me to speak, I kept it short. "I came back to visit a grave," I said. "I stayed because some things can't be buried." What happened to me wasn't new. It was old. But old doesn't mean permanent. We build something different now. One complaint at a time, one honest officer at a time, one kid who doesn't have to be afraid. They listened. Some cried. Some nodded. After we formed a committee, oversight board, they called it, citizens reviewing use of force reports, mandatory training on de-escalation, body cameras that couldn't be turned off. The state sent funds for new hires. A new chief came from Jackson. Black woman, mid-40s, resume full of community work. She walked the streets the first day, shook hands, listened. People noticed. I stayed in Riverbend, moved into the old house with Lena and the boys. Jamal and Marcus asked questions at first. Why the men in uniforms were gone. Why Uncle Eli had marks on his arms. I told them the truth, age appropriate. Some people forgot what right looks like. We reminded them. They accepted it like kids do. Simple, direct. They started calling me the fixer. I didn't correct them. Quietly, I set up a scholarship fund, small at first, from my pension and savings, for kids who wanted college, trade school, anything that took them further than this town had let most of us go. I named it after Clara. Lena helped spread the word. Applications came slow, then steady. One boy got into engineering school. A girl chose nursing. Each acceptance felt like a small victory, a stone laid in a new foundation. One afternoon in late spring, I drove out to the logging road alone. The clearing looked different. Bulldozers had come through, leveling the ground for a park the town council approved. The pole was gone, cut at the base, hauled away. Only a stump remained, splintered and raw. I parked, walked over, touched the rough wood. It felt ordinary now, no power left in it. I sat on the ground, back against what was left of the stump. The sun was milder, leaves budding on the pines. Birds moved overhead. I thought about the day they'd tied me here, the heat, the thirst, the memories that had rushed in like floodwater. I thought about Ruth's voice, Clara's face, my father's silence. None of it had vanished, but it didn't own me anymore. I spoke to the air, low. It wasn't about getting even. It was about closing the door so no one else has to stand where I stood. The wind moved through the trees. I stayed until the light turned golden, then stood, brushed dirt from my pants, and walked back to the car. The stump stayed behind, just a mark on the earth now, soon to be covered in grass and playground equipment. Months later, the trial wrapped. Tate and Rawls got 12 and 10 years. Federal time, no parole early. The chief pleaded to lesser charges, lost his pension, faced disbarment from law enforcement. The mayor resigned. The town didn't cheer. It exhaled, like a breath held too long. I walked Main Street one evening, past Sally's Diner. Betty, the waitress from years ago, waved from the window. I waved back. A new officer, young, black, nodded as he passed on patrol. I nodded too. The street felt wider somehow. Back home, Lena had dinner on the table. Fried chicken, greens, cornbread. The boys talked about school, about a science project Jamal was building. I listened, really listened. The house smelled like home, warm, full, alive. America still carries shadows, deep ones. Places where fear lingers, where power forgets its purpose. But light gets in. It comes through cracked doors, through quiet voices finally speaking, through people who decide enough is enough. It comes through evidence gathered in silence, through families who refuse to stay silent, through old men who come back not to die, but to finish what they started. Don't judge a man by his skin, his car, or the dust on his shoes. You never know the story he's carrying, or what he's willing to endure to change the ending. If this story reached you, touched a place you keep quiet, let me know in the comments. Have you ever faced something like this, or watched it happen to someone you love? Share it. Hit like if justice coming late still feels like justice. Subscribe if you want more real talk from an old man who's seen too much darkness and still believes dawn can break. Thanks for staying with me. Keep safe out there and keep pushing. The light needs all of us.